Hello, brothers and sisters. This is Eugene from Kenya. And what about today? So, I'm going to tell you something which it is important. It is important for you, brothers and sisters, back at home. Now, I've always been telling you something about staying in Africa. It requires a lot of patience. And I believe because I'm an African, a young African kid, a young African, some people don't take my message seriously. Now that some of you don't take my message seriously, I want you to listen to this video about this African American who has stayed in Namibia for 14 years, and now she's going to tell you everything that's always happened in Namibia. And if you listen carefully, you listen the struggles or the challenges that she faces, or the things that she appreciates about staying in Namibia has changed her perspective as a human being, not just as a black person. Now, I want you to watch this video, and I believe that it will make some sense to you about some things that I usually say. Now, let's watch the video and get to know something about it. And also, as usual, guys, always listen to what I say after the video because I believe it is important. I'm going to strike a balance between how it feels to be an African in Africa, listening to American stories, or how African Americans are adapting to Africa. That's why my part of the story, it's also important. So guys, as you watch the video, also try to hear my part about this situation. But it is important, as I always tell you, it is really important for you to also listen to the sister, because you're coming to Africa and these are the things that you need to know. I believe it is important and also important to me. So let's watch the video.
Hey everyone, it's me, Kaylin. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how I see America differently after 14 years of living abroad in Namibia. And for those of you who don't know, I am a Black American that first moved to Namibia in 2010.
I'm on South African Airways, going to Namibia now. So we're in Johannesburg, South Africa. You can see the workers down there and the planes in the distance.
I still live here. I'm now married to a Namibian national. We have 2 kids together and 2 dogs, and I am from New York. So the first thing that stands out to me is that I feel like Americans stress a lot over service disruptions. And I am actually still this way, but I'm just not as bad as I used to be. But whenever there is a natural disaster that impacts electricity, internet, water, I see people on social media panicking, Americans panicking. And this is not obviously about when it really is endangering someone's life, like elderly people or people that are ill and need to be on machines and things like that, because that is obviously a very big major inconvenience. But just people that they still have their house, they still have their health, but the internet is out, the power is out. And I feel like here, people cope a lot better with those types of disruptions. Do they find it to be an inconvenience? Yes, they do. However, I think I, for one, have kind of absorbed a bit of the culture here of not panicking. It's not the worst thing in the world, and having a lot more patience. Things are not always going to get fixed right away. You can survive without electricity unless you need it for medical reasons or something like that, but you can survive. You can use a match and a candle. You can absolutely survive without internet. Life will go on. So it's been a lessons in patience, and I have built a lot more patience from dealing with those things that do happen a lot more frequently here. And even, for example, if there's going to be a water outage, like when I first moved here and I was living in a rural area and we had a really bad rainy season that was tripping up all sorts of systems. And as a result, we would get frequent power and water outages. And so I just started saving water the night before I had to be at work the next morning because I was teaching at a school. You know, there are ways to be flexible. If it's the summer season, then you don't have air conditioner, you don't have a fan, but it's not the end of the world, you know? Like it's like I sometimes think that we are not that comfortable with inconvenience, and that's debatable as to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Some people might say maybe people here need to be more demanding. I feel like Americans need to be less demanding and a bit more flexible, but that's one major thing that I've noticed after living here for all these years, just the cultural difference in terms of coping with inconvenience. American culture is very, very urgent compared to Namibian culture, which is much more relaxed. Americans, we are an urgent, timeliness-based culture. We want things done yesterday. We don't have patience. If I called you and you're going to fix this, then it needs to be done when you say it's going to be done. If we have an appointment at 3:30, you need to be there by 3:15, right? If you have an assignment, you should probably turn it into your boss yesterday, not the day that it's due. You know, like that's the culture of American society. And for me, I come from New York and everything is very fast paced, very rushy. Here, if it's a holiday weekend or it's a Friday, it's not uncommon to go to a particular office, could be a government office, and people have taken off early because it's a holiday weekend. That is pretty normal. And I used to find it very frustrating, like when things leading up to a weekend or a holiday would close early or just not be able to be done because people have sort of taken off a little bit early for the weekend. I used to find it really frustrating. And I used to find that culture that people talk about, African time, of like not always being on time, I used to find that frustrating. But to be honest, now it's really refreshing to not have that pressure cooker like type of American timeliness that is on your back. Rush. Why aren't you there? It's really refreshing to be in a more relaxed culture. And it makes you really question, what is so important about timeliness? Why does it have to be this way? You know, you start just thinking about things at a bit deeper level and analyzing what you may have grown up to think was the way, and realizing that there are some benefits to things moving at a slower pace. A bit of a healthier work-life balance. People are able to turn their back on their job at a certain point and say, you know what, I'm going home, I'm going to enjoy my weekend. It's not even 5 o'clock, but peace. Whereas in the US, we are so diligent about staying until the last hour, until the last minute, because we have to, we don't have a choice. But there's not as much sneaking out and just saying it's been enough for this week or this day. And that's probably a good thing, because at the end of the day, you are breaking your neck for this job that if something happens to you, it's gonna keep going and you're gonna be where you are. And will you have enjoyed your life? Taking your job with a grain of salt, you know, doing what you have to do, but not taking it so seriously that it's gonna take over your life. I really see, after living in Namibia for 14 years, whenever I go back home to New York, I see how we as Americans live in a society of overconsumption. That supersized culture, like when you go to a restaurant and the plate is like hugely filled with food, versus here where things are served in much smaller portions. The supermarkets here have so much less variety than in American supermarkets. Whenever I go home, I'm super overwhelmed by the massive amount of options that simply exist in the supermarket. It's almost like my eyes have to adjust to all the choices, and it's just overwhelming to make a choice, to make a selection. We are a society of, I think, too many choices, and I don't think it's always necessary. And with that, I think comes also a bit of wastefulness. Here, and I notice this with my husband, for example, if something's broken, people here are not so quick to throw it away. They might find a way to sell it, or really they might just find a way to try to fix it themselves, or find someone they know that can fix it, or take it apart and try to fix it. My husband will do that. He's not an electrician, but he will do that. People will really try and keep something until they get the last that they can get out of it before going to replace it or before going to buy a new one. There is a big culture of reusing here that, despite the recycling systems that we see in America, I still feel like things here get used a lot more over and over, and really you really get your dime's worth, you know, when you buy something here. Than in America, we just quick to throw something away, you know, and so that's a big difference I see. Is just the culture of like overconsumption, and I think wastefulness, unfortunately, comes a lot with that in the US as well. One thing that I always notice is just the comparison of social services. I think American culture has way more social service resources and support for vulnerable populations like disabled or the elderly, people that are homeless, for example, abused women or victims of crimes, whereas here it just doesn't exist as much. There are social workers here, but there's just a lot less of support for people that are in difficult, vulnerable positions. I see, for example, they call them street children here, which are literally children on the street who are homeless, many times addicted to drugs, and they're begging for food, begging for money. It never gets old to me. It's always shocking. And I asked my husband, well, where can they go? Are there shelters here for them? Orphanages? And for the most part, there really isn't. In my town, for example, I don't live in the capital, but there's not much support for homeless children in my town. That's shocking and it's scary. Even I hear a lot of stories here in Namibia about women who are abused going to report the crime, but then at the end of the day, they have to go right back home into their situation where they are absolutely exposed and vulnerable to their abuser knowing where they are and coming to get them. There aren't many women's shelters here. There aren't many homeless shelters. There are definitely things of that nature. I remember when I was a volunteer back in 2011, I was teaching at a school and there was a student there. She was severely physically disabled, which made it difficult for her to walk, to write, things like that. And she used to get swallowed up in the transition from class to class, like when the periods change. She would get just sort of swallowed up in the crowds of the students, and nobody helped her. There was nothing for that student. And I was just shocked by that, and I wondered, why isn't there more to accommodate her disability? Really, in that area, there weren't many, if any. There wasn't even one school for disabled children, and the school didn't have like a social worker or something like that was on the school property. Maybe she had a social worker else that worked somewhere else, but there hardly was anything done to accommodate her. She was on her own to fend for herself. We in the US, although it's not perfect, the social services system is absolutely far from perfect in America, but it is significantly more well-resourced, and there is a lot more support in the US than there is here for vulnerable populations. Another big thing here is that there is so much entrepreneurial opportunity here compared, I think, to the US, where the competition is so fierce and everything is sort of already, all the ideas are already sort of like snatched up and done. It's like you really have to work hard to like make a dent as an entrepreneur in the US or find something unique. Everything has almost been thought of. Whereas here, particularly once you get outside of the bigger cities or outside of the capital city, there is so much entrepreneurial opportunity available. I see it everywhere, and I'm always like, wow, like that's an idea. That's an idea. There is a lot more entrepreneurial opportunity, I think, in the motherland on the continent of Africa than there is in the US. The educational system is something that I will always continually be fascinated by, the differences between there and here. In the US, students have a lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom. They can speak their mind. They know they can call the police on their parents if they want to, or on their principal or their teacher. Here, that is not the case. Students are really, really, I think, respectful in a different kind of way because of that. There is also corporal punishment that still exists here, which probably accounts for a lot of that respect, but also just the culture. Like there's even a big respect here for elders that is ingrained, I think, in young people here. And so it's not to say that American kids are worse than African kids, but there are some differences there. Here, the kids are like, yes, miss, no, miss, can I help you, miss? It's more so of that, and there is not much of a talking back type of behavior. Although many Namibians that are older, I think they say, like, I've seen some of them say, oh, like kids back in my day, like the kids couldn't get away with this, or they didn't act like that. And I sometimes I want to say, wow, like to me they actually are still Namibian because they're still highly well behaved. And if you guys saw the way kids in American school system, where you would have your minds blown. But it's just very different in terms of the culture of school children, of the culture of students and schools. It is vastly different. One thing I notice is that Black American culture, we have a lot of influence. And I knew this before, but I see it even at a deeper level here in Namibia. Every day I see little aspects of my culture around me, from the stores that I'm in that sell shirts that say Harlem or Brooklyn on them, to people that know me greeting me. This doesn't happen often, but it has happened at least 3 or 4 times where someone comes up to me and they're like, what's up, my That's the influence of hip hop. Or sometimes I'm driving around and I hear Brandy like playing a lot, like her songs like seem to be really popular. We have a lot of influence, and I love to see the blending of these two Black diasporas just merging. It's really nice. It's actually pretty comforting it reminds me of home, and it's just nice to see little tidbits of my culture all the way here in Namibia. And the last thing is that no matter how long I'm here, there's no place like home. I moved here ready to shed my Americanness, and no matter how long I am here, I really haven't been able to do that. I am very much an American, and that's not really something that you can really just totally erase. You can't hide from it. It's always there. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Share your thoughts and experiences on experiencing other cultures and what you've noticed about theirs versus yours in the comments section, and I will talk to you guys soon. Till next time.
Welcome back, family. I hope you're well wherever you are. So see one thing that I'm going to tell you. The first point that sister raised, the sister talked about dealing with inconveniences. Okay, things are not always being fixed right away, and that's one thing I need to tell you. And I think you've been hearing a couple African Americans in Tanzania, African Americans in Kenya complaining that if something goes wrong, it is not fixed at the same time, and these things causes inconveniences to them. And I believe that you've listened to what the sister is trying to say. Now I'm here to strike this balance. Now listen very well. We normally tell you to be patient with Africa for a reason, you know. So we have a number of inconveniences that sister have talked about, including experts coming late to your place. What I'll say as an African, always have alternative plan B. If it is electricity, always have candles. The way sister have said, you can have generators. If you have a business that you're doing that you have to always attend to, you need to set them. Always have a plan B. I'm not giving you the solution. Always put something which really works for you if they intended, because electricity in Africa, some parts of Africa has 54 countries, some parts of Africa, it is so unpredictable, especially the time that you need it. It's the time that it might go off. So always have a plan B for everything that you're doing, be it water, you know. Always have a plan B. Either you can save the water, or you can just try find, you know, a way of an alternative way of fixing this problem. We are also struggling with some places are also struggling with water, and you need to know that. And in my videos, I've always been saying this. Most of you take my words for granted. Now you are hearing it from the sister. So always have alternatives. Most of African Americans who have come to Africa are complaining that it is so hard to find running water, which might be true, but what can you do to alleviate this problem? Have a lot of jerrycans, have a lot of things to save your water. And this is something which even happens in the city. You have your jerrycans. You don't only depend on running water, because we have what is called water rationing in Africa, especially when you are in urban areas where we have population of people who use water. We have factories which uses water. We have, you know, a lot of machines which uses water. So there has to be water rationing, and you need to understand that as a person. That's why you need to have things like jerrycans that you always use to, fill and use wherever the water goes. The water runs short. Even right now when I'm talking to you, the only water that we are using is the water which we saved. We have no water in the running tap because we are in the city, and that's what happens. And I'm telling you the truth, even what is happening on the ground, like where I am right now, I'm telling you what I'm telling you, and it is true. The sister also talked about the sense of urgency. And in the United States, everything is, rush hours, and there is timelessness, the way sister have said. If it's a specific time, it's a specific time. If they agree that they are going to do something at a given time, they're gonna do it at that given time. Well, I think you've ever heard this phrase that says that we have the African time. Now, let me give you a little bit of a story. So in Africa, when we say that a meeting it's 10, know that it's 11. When we say that a meeting is 1 p.m., know that it's either it is 2 p.m. or it is 3 p.m. So we have African time, which deviates with 1 to 2 hours. The importance of always saying this, I want you to look at this at a positive side or at a positive angle. The reason as to why we say this as Africans is because Uh, if you tell a person to come at 4, they'll come at 5. I think that's how we are reluctant as Africans. So if you tell them to come earlier, they might come late with 1 hour, which is the exact time that you wanted the meeting to start. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. And that's what I mean by African time. Also, since I talked about we are having a more relaxed culture, I'll lead back to a place in Kenya, Mombasa, the coast. People in Mombasa are always known to be they are so soft, they are so slow, they are so relaxed, they speak slowly, like they don't have that haste of doing something, as compared to Nairobi, where Nairobi is like the new LA, or it is like the new New York. Like it's always in the rush hours. But in Mombasa, people are just slow, people are just walking slowly. But you realize that in place like Kenya, people rush. People rush. You even if you're driving a car, you'll have to brake for a person who is passing, because everyone is just passing, as compared to Mombasa. So we have that relaxed culture, but it is not entirely all parts of Africa. You also need to know that. Let's talk about consumption and waste over consumption. Yeah. A lot of documentaries have always been done. In United States, a lot of used clothes are being dumped in Africa, and it happens. So we having a culture here in Africa where you are not allowed to throw food. It is even inclined to our culture. Throwing food means that you are trying to mock the ancestors, because it is the ancestors who have given us the food. We believe that as Africans. And that's why in Africa we pour libations, because we believe that if we pour these libations, the ancestors will eat the food. So when you throw the food away, it means that you are mocking the ancestors who provides you with energy, who provides you with knowledge to get food or to get money. So in Africa, we are always at the lookout of not wasting. We are always at the lookout of not throwing away excess foods. The things that happen are this. If you have a lot of clothes that are undersized, maybe you've grown, you can put them and give it to your sibling who is younger. And that's what we do in Africa. If I have a shoes let's say the length of my leg has grown, the shoes I'll take and give it to the sibling who follows me. And that's which thing is happening. We inherit clothes, we inherit things, even the things of the dead. If a person dies, if they are my brother or my uncle, I inherit the clothes or something, as compared to the United States, where things are being dumped. You need to understand that. And this is also part of African culture. I'm speaking of my country, Kenya, but I believe this is something which also happens in many places in Africa that you ought to know. Another thing, I'll talk about social services that also the lady talked about. I'm striking the balance. I'm telling you this as an African. She was saying it as an African American. I'm bringing you to the ground and I'm telling you this as an African. You need to know this. I believe it's important. She talked about we have a lot of disabled people. We don't have a lot of social workers in Africa. She talked about street families. True. I'll tell you this. Even if tomorrow I take you to the street of Nairobi, maybe recording myself, you will see a child coming to me with a tin or something. They need me to give them some coin. Of course, if I have, I'll give them. Now, we don't have a lot of rehabilitation centers. We're having still a lot of street families especially in my country, Kenya. She was talking about Namibia, but yes, these things happen in Africa, So you are an African American. You know what you can offer to your motherland. This is something which is voluntarily, and I've seen a couple of African Americans starting this movement and trying to help giving out the social works like just the sister did. The sister volunteered to be a teacher, which is something which is good. Just volunteering being a teacher, you're not being paid. I mean, that's something which is so good. You're offering services, So Africa still needs you, and I believe that we need each other for us to be in a good place. I'll also talk about entrepreneurial opportunities. The sister said it so clearly, so clearly. Kind of United States is so saturated. Of course, opportunities is limitless. Okay, in as much as we say that United States is saturated, we still have the capabilities as a black people to come up with new things. I mean, we are the discoveries of unseen things and things which are yet to come. So what do I mean? Maybe if you're tired of this saturation in entrepreneurial field and you want a place where it's not saturated, guess what? Africa gives you that opportunity. And the sister have said it. And the same thing I always say in my videos. Africa gives you the opportunity of doing this. So you realize that it is important for you to come to Africa to invest. But I always give a disclaimer. Don't just sell everything in United States, coming and starting things in Africa, saving money in your bank. That what won't do you well. Even if I know you have attended business classes, you know this. You don't save money in the bank. Even if you save money in the bank, it doesn't stay for a long time. You go and save in another thing, invest in another thing, so your money keeps working for you. Same way, if you close your businesses in the United States, it means that you will not have a working money. So if you don't have a working money, it means that the money that you'll be withdrawing, it won't be rejuvenating in the bank. So it means that you will be going loss, you'll be suffering from inflation. So let your money work. Don't close your businesses in the United States. It will also help you while in Africa. Yes. I don't want to talk about much about education. I'll talk about Black American connection. Yes. I've always been receiving comments. Even if you come to Africa today, you will listen to African American music in our shops, in our cars, in our public transports. Even their paintings are in our cars. Come to Nairobi today, you will see Jay-Z, Chris Brown, Rihanna, name all those black celebrities. You'll have them in our cars. And yeah, we also use your slang a lot of quite a number of time in campus, in high school. And I think there was a time I did a straight interview about Africans, Kenyans, talking about the black movies that they know. So there is that black connection that we have as black people. Of course, I know we have our differences. Some are being perpetrated by, there have always been issues to do things to do with diaspora wars. They have always been there, So this is something that we can't fill ourselves into. We need to look beyond that. And so, without saying much, I believe that this video will be helpful. So guys, if you watched this video and reached here, you can consider subscribing to my channel. This is Eugene from Kenya. Until then, see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.